Hello and welcome everyone to this another session by the Product Folks. I'm Abhay this side, and I have a Parth with me to host the event for tonight. Thanks for joining today, and I think this is our second conversations. After a long time, and India was battling for COVID, and the community was also trying to help in those initiatives. Really happy to see everyone back, and we have an amazing session lined up for you today. Before we kickstart the session and introduce the speaker for today, just a quick intro about the Product Folks for those who are attending our events for the first time. The Product Folks is a volunteer driven community for product managers, marketers, designers, and everyone interested in product. Apart from conducting such events, we also have a bunch of initiatives for product enthusiasts. We recently revamped our brand and the website. So do go and check that out, the initiatives that we have. I'll put the link in the chat section. Especially if you're looking to break into product, you will find many other interesting resources as well that we have curated for you. We also have another initiative called Insurjo, which is an APA program, going to launch soon. So do check in, keep an eye out on that on our socials as well. I'll also add the link to that specific program in the chat as well. With this, I'll be handing over to Parth to talk about the session and the speakers for today.
Awesome. Thanks, Abhay. So, good evening to everyone in India and good morning, afternoon to everyone outside that. Thank you guys for joining in. This crazy support that we have got lately, even during those dark times, has been amazing. So, we have a very special partner for today as a part of our workshop series. We have folks representing Sketch. Sketch is a full stack user interface and user experience designing platform. If you are anyway closely related to design in some way, you would be knowing or would have been using Sketch for sure. But more to come with Matteo and Francesco. So just to quickly introduce both of them, they are our evangelizers of design for Sketch, technically design advocates. They connect with community like ours and folks like you to sort of evangelize this whole concept of design as you know, as a profession, as a skill, and as separately also induct you guys about how powerful Sketch as a tool is and how it's helping out companies and products to build great things. So yeah, just one very quick rain check here. There are three questions live on a poll in the poll section there on your right probably. If you can just quickly vote in there about whatever you think about that question, that would be great. That would help us understand you better, understand the whole audience better. And yeah, there is a Q&A section where you can drop in your questions. This time, a lot of your questions might be answered during the conversation. So do keep a check on the content and you can quickly drop in your questions there. With any further time delay, I would hand it over to both of them to take it forward. And do introduce yourself because I didn't do justification to that for sure. So yeah, over to you guys.
Hello, everyone. So I'll a very quick intro on myself, and then we'll jump into looking at design systems too. So one thing, as Parth was saying, design advocates are evangelists. Yes, that's probably the closest thing, and we've seen in the industry so far for years. They've been around. What we do at Sketch, though, is basically we help teams make the most of Sketch, and it can be about learning how a new feature works, how to design systems work. So it's not necessarily Sketch alone. It's also a little bit of best practices in general, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Workflow improvements, working on handoff, working on automation, plugins, assistance, anything you can.
But we are not in Italy, which is interesting. Yeah, and super happy to be here, and thanks to Product Folks for having us. It's super nice.
And I also wanted to say, from the people at Sketch, we hope that all of India does better soon, and we are sorry for what you guys went through, and so yeah, just just know that you are in our hearts. Thank you. Okay, so shall we start sharing the screen? Sounds good. Okay. Okay, let me see when you can see it.
In the meantime, please drop your questions in the Q&A section. I will take a look at it with the help of Parth. So please do it. We love to have something that is more conversational and interactive. So please do it.
Absolutely. That's how Matteo and I can go on forever during these talks. But feel free to interrupt anytime. And so this is really a quick agenda I want to put here, so we know roughly what we're going to go through. So at least if there's a question that you think matches any of these sections, you know that will be covered at some point. But the gist is we'll look at a responsive project, and we'll talk about and we'll talk about the benefits and for everybody, design team, product managers, and users on keeping things consistent across the board. And then we'll talk about how to basically put all these consistencies into a library and reuse it in a design system to go faster, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really just so you can read it as well very quickly. And then we'll show how also, once you have a design system in place, it's very easy to make a change and see that change applied to everything you already created. And because systems are a living and breathing thing. They're not like you do it and you're done. So, and then at the end, we'll also create a mobile layout using this design systems elements, and so you'll be able to see how quickly you can build stuff as well. Okay, so, and then some surprises, which I think you also enjoy. And stay around. There will be raffles throughout. We have a few licenses to share, so hopefully you're one of the lucky ones. Okay. So
Francesco, just one thing. Can you make your full screen this particular slide?
Sure.
It's possible. Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Yes, that's better. So you should be able to see now all the toolbar at the top. And I cannot see the polls right now. Do we have a rough idea of who's attending in terms of audience type? I'd love to know, if you're a developer, if you are product managers, product designers, if you have experience with Sketch or not. I will not get too much into the weeds of how to use Sketch today. Yeah. I want to get across the fact, the power and things you can do once you put the design system in place, and Sketch is a great tool to do so. Matteo or Parth, can you give me a little feedback? I'm looking at, I don't know if the polls already have any answers there or need to be closed to see them. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Yeah. So, Matthew, do you want to give a summary, or should I?
I cannot read any reply to the poll at the moment. I cannot see anything. So
okay, cool. Let me do that. So we have the answers ready. Approximately 20% are product designers, 35% are product managers.
Okay.
That's on the first question. I'm actually closing all the polls. Just give me a sec.
Okay, only the 35% of people used Sketch in the past.
Okay. So okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much. Okay, so some of these concepts apply to any design tool. So you probably, if you use other tools to do design systems, you run into the concept of either component or symbol or frame. That just means something that can be reused in between different screens, right? And that means also that once you, like a sticker sheet, like almost, that you can insert them quickly, and you can also, the moment you update the original source of those symbols, the changes propagate across every design. So in this case, it's pretty obvious. I just want to take through some of the consistencies you see here, just because those consistencies are the things that will have to be turned into a design system. And I'll speak to what is a design system. A design system is more than just a library. There's a lot more to it, so I'll speak to it. So as you can see, I have a few product cards here that are repeated. So obviously, I want that to be always the same element, just changing data, and Sketch makes it really easy to do that. You see on the right side, this is saying that that's a product card. And if I select any other one of them, still same component. So if you're familiar with the components in code, that's the equivalent within Sketch. So you can see I can just change the title, I can change the image here, I can change the price. And you can see here the data is also realistic. I'll speak to meaning there's real rupee values and there's names and the images are changing per card. That is a big part of creating a mock prototype that is then easier to put in front of users. I'll speak to also quickly prototyping later. You'll see now I can see a link here from this card to this other one. But that is an important part of design. Designing and prototyping, even at low fidelity or quickly, is really important to get through some of the quirks of a design from the get-go instead of getting all the way to present it to users. Then showing to users, that's another phase, of course. Okay, so you can see some consistencies here. Obviously, typography is the same. We call them textiles in Sketch, but they are basically just a way to apply the same properties to a text layer. So in this case, this has an H3, and this is also as an H3, and you can see we have an H3 in other places if you were reusing it. Technically, this could have been a smaller one. Today is more about, we don't want to show you the perfect design system. We actually came up with a streamlined version of it in case we didn't want to overwhelm anyone. So we'll take you through that. And then you can see, because this is a responsive project for an e-commerce app, that I also have some desktop layouts. We're using the same exact card at different dimensions, because in Sketch you can create symbols that are also responsive. And we might not get into the weeds of how to create those responsive components, but just know that you can create a component that you can reuse at different sizes. Sometimes you can even scale them up. The best use is usually just resizing them, but that really minimizes the amount of components you have to create for your design system. Then you have other components here for, let's say, reviews. Matteo, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I wanted to jump on the thing after that one. Sorry. Just
no problem. And then we have, like for example, a form. That is probably one of the best examples where consistency is good for usability, because you don't want to treat the different text fields or input fields differently if they do this similar function. So for example, here, these are all the same component, just variants of the same component. For example, this is a focus one, and this is just the one populated. And then there's one, for example, for when you're not entering a value yet. Same thing for checkboxes or radio buttons, etc. Okay, so all these consistencies, you could definitely design them by hand every time and check everything is in place. And we even have something called assistants that can help you keep things in check. But the best thing is to create something, and then once you create it, let's say, then you turn it into a symbol. That symbol then will be able to be reused elsewhere. Just to show how quickly you can create a symbol literally can be, I'll make it really brutal like this, and we'll show you here. A symbol can literally be this. Okay. And I'll make the text a little bigger. This is really just to give you a sense of what a symbol is. Actually, I'll make this smaller. Want to simulate a button. Okay. And then you can go here, create symbol, and call it button. This is at the very basic of creating a button in Sketch, okay? So if I were to click Send a Simples page, we'll also put it in this page up here. Let's do that for a second. So now that I have this, I can duplicate it real quick. And if I go back here in the symbols page, let's say I were to change this and change the radius. When I go back here, then you see all the instances I've updated. So this is the basic concept behind symbols. You build it once, and then you can reuse it. Okay, let me just delete this.
Okay, Francisco, for a second. So I want to add one thing that is important to mention about what a design system is, because plenty of the people that are listening didn't ever use a design system, or they actually had a problem because they don't understand how to use it, or why designers want to have it or don't want to have it, or why developers does want to have it or not. It is important to mention that a design system is not only something that is related with design, is a combination of plenty of different things that helps to make things consistent, as Francesco mentioned, but also you know that if you're using a component, that component usually does have a code underneath, and for a developer is easy to take this component, put the component in place and make it working, and it will work consistently all across the system because the code is shared. It is important to mention also that it is not only code and design that are part of a design system, but there are a lot of other things like, I don't know, texts, so copywriting, and a lot of other things. And this is where also the consistency between the data that you have and you can use also for the examples are important, and we're going to dig into it a bit later. But there are, and a design system is useful for a lot of different roles. In my previous job, a lot of product owner and product manager were benefit from having a design system because they were able to create quickly something based upon components that could be reused, and they knew in advance that they were usable and they would have been developed in the same way they were designing it. And so it helped them to put together ideas, brainstorming, new pages, new things that then designers could also take over, because not all the times you've got in your company, designers can manage everything. Sometimes you need to use other roles and other people to help to develop your product. So more or less, the entire company can benefit from having a design system. And also, a design system helps people to communicate better. Yes, I placed the agenda into a quick agenda, not this complete one.
Well, it wouldn't let me place the whole thing, so that's why I'm making this.
And so, by having a design system, you also create a sort of language that is understandable all across the company and all across the people that should interact together. Because if you talk about a button, everyone knows what a button is, how it works, how it is, where it is supposed to go, etc., etc. So everyone that is talking about a button knows that you will interact with it in some ways, and where and how you will interact with it as well. And this is important because if you also have to pitch an idea to someone else, knowing the language and knowing that everyone shares the same language is helpful and useful. I just wanted to add that because to create a design system for people that never use it, that are not designers, they can benefit from having a design system. And actually the market nowadays is going in that direction. Small, big companies have a design system. Agencies use design systems. More or less everywhere you've got something that is related with digital, you have a design system in place.
Thank you, Matteo. Yes, I definitely wanted to talk about all those benefits. I'm posting now per somebody requested. I'll post the agenda here, and it's kind of the longer one, and you'll see that you can actually look at, even if you're not on a Mac, you can see the output of what Sketch creates in the cloud. So this link hopefully will be clickable. I don't know if anybody can see my link. It doesn't look like it's clickable maybe, but you can just copy and paste it in the browser, and you basically will go. You will go to a page that looks like this. You go to a page that looks like this, and not only if this is now a public link, I just changed the settings to make it available to everybody, so you can read it there. But if this were a document, you can also expect it. So that's something that you might not be aware of if you're a developer working with a designer on a Mac, but you're a developer on a PC, you can still receive everything this way. So
Yeah.
you can still inspect everything.
I shared it in the chat, and that is clickable. Yes.
Great. Great. Okay. So yeah, that's the most important thing I wanted to talk about is how do we get to everybody to agree on using design system? Because I mean, sometimes it can come from the top and it just becomes a decision, and then people have to use it. But you really want to get the whole company to get behind it. Sometimes it starts from a place. It can start from developers needing more consistencies. They're tired of having designers always come up with a new button. Or it can be the designers also want consistency themselves, and they are asking developers to not reinvent the wheel, recode it every time, and just so they have something for reference. Or product managers, of course, they want to make sure that the team is running smoothly and they are being productive. So, but how do you get people? So one of the main things you have to do is to come up with naming conventions. So as Matteo said, a button is a button. Don't call it a CTA. But if you want to change the name, just make sure everybody's on it and they can remember. The harder it is to remember, the harder it's going to be for them to use it and then to even search for that component once in Sketch. At the end of the, and that's true not only for Sketch, but also for if a developer needs to now type in that component in React or somewhere else, if they cannot remember the name, that is a waste of everybody's time. Managing communication and changes is not easy in general, but for design systems is really key. One thing that Matteo might have touched upon is the fact that a design system is a product itself. So it's very hard to build it once and be done with it. You usually start with something. You even start then building products off of that design system, even before it reaching like a super maturity. But then over time, you keep, in the very beginning, usually you don't have code to go with it. And then you start developing some parts of the design system. And then at that point, you want to make sure that you start having, if you change anything because you're making a HTML prototype, you're testing things, and the button doesn't work, then you want that change that was made in code and that was approved and accepted by users to bring it back into the design system, as in like the technical library designers will be using.
Yeah.
But
Francesco, just one quick request that is coming from the audience. If we can zoom a little bit in the Sketch window, because I think the audience still cannot see that well. Yeah, and if you can just play, navigate in a zoomed state only. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is it better now?
Yeah, this fine.
Okay. And sorry, this is okay. Hopefully, please tell me if I need to change any settings. I could try to make the window a little smaller, but I wanted to make sure that the UI at least was visible. Okay. So now one thing we are looking at what is called the library. A library, the only difference between a Sketch file and a library is that in the library, you keep the components a little bit out of context. Like you're building you might have heard of atomic design, you're building the smaller components, and then you're building on top of for example, and you can see here, buttons can be considered atomic components. And then you start building, form fields like this, and then you start combining them into something that it's more useful to build, let's say, a layout. And that's where also the consistency. You don't want to necessarily distribute buttons by themselves. Depends how much freedom you want to give to the end users of your design system. But usually there's going to be some people managing the design system and managing a library, and all have to predict all the possible uses. It's not always possible to predict of the users. So you want to collaborate with the actual product designers working on the end products as well, and get feedback from them, and they might come back to you and say, hey, we need a tertiary level. Like, for example, here we have a primary button and a secondary one. But somebody could come back and say, hey, and here in Sketch, you just duplicate this, pressing Alt or Command D, and say, okay, we want a tertiary button. And I'm typing down here, tertiary button. And the only difference with that is we don't want a border for that. Let's pretend that that's the only difference with tertiary button. The moment you hit save, this library now is uploaded to cloud. That component now will be visible to everybody that has on my same workspace or subscribe to the library. And so they'll be able to insert that component now in their designs. And we'll see later how we can insert those components. Matteo, am I going too fast?
No, but there is a question that maybe can be addressed right now. That is someone that said that asked us about the problem of making local text color styles and apply them to the element of the page. So maybe we can just quickly go here through these things and see. And I don't know. It is important to showcase, in my mind, the fact that when you are building, like building a design system is like building an article or also code is the same thing. You've got very small things and you put them together like a Lego with the Lego bricks. You put them together and you create the bigger component, like in this card in this case. But also the smallest button that Francesco was showing you, in reality does have a few other items underneath. It does have a text layer, and the text layer can have a layer style, and the layer style can have a color, etc., and also does have a background that can have a different style. And as you can see, in the button primary is filled, the button secondary just have the borders. Don't worry about the pink color that you can see here. Is just a color that helps Francesco to manage things that are transparent, but it is not imported when you are importing this symbol as an instance in a different file.
Yeah, you can choose to include it in the export or in instances. In this case, I was just using as a preview, as Michael said, to see transparency wherever it might be. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so like the question is related with layer style and textiles. They are an important part of all the elements, because the more you've got something that you can change once and change everywhere, the better, because you save a lot of time. And this is the concept of a design system, and having symbols that, as Francesco exposed to you before, if you change the corner radius of a button and the button is a symbol, all the buttons that are inheriting those changes. Same thing with typography, colors, etc. So I let you go for that, Francesco.
Yeah, so that's I probably should have not skipped this page. I should have given an overview of this document, this library. There's a lot of ways to build libraries. Smaller ones can be all in one page. You can or just have a symbols page. Usually, though, you want to also document for the designers themselves how to use the library. So a good way is to, for example, create breakdown of pages when, in this case, we have typography and colors. And so here I can show you how to create, these are already have styles applied to it, right? H1, H2, etc. I'm going to show you how to create one from scratch. One thing to keep in mind in Sketch, if you never used it, is how to insert things. You can go through this drop-down menu. There's other ways I'll show you later, but this is like the most conventional, even if you are an older version of Sketch. So here you can go and choose either to insert a shape, rectangles, etc., lines, etc., or the other important thing is insert text. And the other key element of designing is inserting artboards. So I want you to remember this little thing. Art, as in we know there, design, the closest thing can be probably art too. So think about A-R-T, artboard, rectangle, text. So those are the key shortcuts. You just press A, and we'll create an artboard. You can choose from preset here. For example, I want this one here. Okay, and then you can press R if you want to create a rectangle. Whoops, sorry. You can press R to create a rectangle, or you can press T to create text. So this is the very basic element. You have to first have a text element to create a style. This is at least the most canonical way. Usually you want to see, especially if you're not used to managing styles from zero, you want to create them visually this way. So I enter text. Now I can change to a different font, let's say. I'll keep it open sans not to mess this document. Then you can choose the weight. You can choose the other properties like size, etc. Let's say I want to make it 48 so we can see a bit. And then you can apply a color. A color can be just the color like it is here if you click on the left side, or it could be using a color that you already use elsewhere. So that color you already use elsewhere is called a color variable in Sketch. And in general, can be the closest thing to color variables in CSS, or color tokens if you are familiar with color tokens in code. So in this case, I'm going to give you a completely different color. Let's say this, so we can see the difference. And I can click create color variable, and then call it, let's say, product folks color. Okay, so we know that it was created today. Product folks color, create, and I have it right here. And then you can see I actually even access to all the other colors that have been created that are part of this document. So this is, once you create it once, you don't have to think about, okay, what is that fuchsia or that blue? You know exactly, you can pick one of these and that will apply it immediately. This is good because if you then change the original color, that will also change everywhere it's being used. So there's different schools of thoughts and different ways of using colors. One is to define the color in an abstract way as possible, let's say primary, so that, and that's good for systems that need to be, let's say you have a white and you want to propose it to a client with their branding, and another client you just want to swap the colors. That's the perfect reason for calling those colors primary and secondary and tertiary, etc. Otherwise, another way can also be to name things the way they are. So if it's red, call it red. If it's blue, call it blue. And then you can combine those color variables into styles, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Thank you, Matteo, for applying the same color variable you see here. So
yeah, I just wanted to show that a color variable can be applied, because it's a color, can be applied to different kind of shapes or layers. A text layer can have a color variable applied to, and also a rectangle can have the same color variable applied to. And if I'm gonna change the color variable, I don't know, Francesco, if you can, because I'm not sharing my screen. If you can change the color variable.
If I change this, see, I'm going to update this. The first you see a preview just on the layer that you were editing. Once you click update, that will be applied everywhere.
Yes.
And then you can apply color variables to pretty much anything, borders, shadows, and in a roundabout way also to gradients, but definitely you can apply to pretty much every element. So this is like at the very least, use color variables if you don't want to get into creating styles. But when you're creating a design systems, you actually want your end users to use as much as possible the styles and not only the color variables. It can be okay sometimes to use a maybe color variable just to tint icon somewhere but styles will make it easier if to update things that are not just the fill, for example, just the border, and combine multiple properties. This will be a little more obvious once now I start adding other properties to this text layer. So text layer here, obviously I can manage also alignment and things like that. So let's say I were to make it centered here, okay? And then I can apply other things. I could even apply other fills on top. I'm just gonna add a shadow so we can all see that now textile that I'll create in a second is a combination of multiple properties, not just color or just font family and size, etc. So here now, let's finally create this textile per the question. So if I click here, create, now I can say product folks text. Okay. Now we have this special style. If I were to create a new text layer here, Sketch remembers the last basic settings of the text layer. So now I can apply to this text layer, go to this document, PF text, and apply it. And you can see now I have the same properties here, and you can see the style is applied to both of them. In fact, if I select both of them, this doesn't say multiple styles, just says that the same style is applied to both of them. Do you think that this answered the question?
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe we can send them over later in the follow-up to Parth so they can share it, something more in depth about styles, etc. Because people that don't know Sketch and they never use it probably will be bored if we are gonna go more in depth in that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, if you want to create a style here for let's say for some, I'm making it obvious here. Okay, you can click create, and same thing, PF style. Oops. Okay, and you can, if you make a mistake like me, you can rename the style anytime, PF style. Okay, so now this is really the basics of creating all these styles. You can do it manually, or you can import them. You can use plugins to automate some of this. We can link to plugins to automate some of this for the designers that maybe don't want to do things manually. In the very beginning, it's good to just practice a little bit of this. But the point is also not to have necessarily the perfect style from the beginning. But if you do know that you're creating a new element that needs to be clearly distinct from other things, apply a style to it, because you'll be able to then update it later on. You don't want to go back after you created a whole flow and now you have to update all the labels somewhere. Now you have to do it manually if you have not applied a style. So that's why I recommend to do that.
Sorry if I interrupt you again.
It's okay. I cannot see you, so it's very hard to interact.
Yeah. The last bit that maybe is important to showcase in this case that can help also us to go forward with the design system is that in Sketch now we've got two different kind of views. One is the one that we are seeing now, that is like the Canva view, but then also we have a component view. Sorry, you are inserting things.
It's fine.
To the component view.
So with Control-2, you can switch between this view here, the component. Now we're in the components view that Matteo was mentioning.
Yeah.
If I go to Textiles, you can see the one we just created.
Exactly. You can see the entire system of things that you already have. You can rename things here. You can group them following patterns that you decide to do, etc., etc. And this is another of the questions that we have in the Q&A is about naming conventions, which is quite hard. The fastest question, the fastest answer is that you will follow all names that are conventional all around the world and everyone can understand them automatically. Like button is something that more or less everyone can understand. But then if you've got special cases, my suggestion, and again, this is quick and dirty, but we can go a lot more in depth, is to do a quick research internally within your colleagues in design, in development, and in product, QAs, also customer support many times, etc., and try to understand if they understand what you think this name mean. Because sometimes you are naming, I don't know, stepper, and you don't know what a stepper is. And there are many different kind of steppers, and people understand different things. And it is important to find the right definition for any different component, and then different style, and then different color, etc. Because maybe also a semantic color. You've got warning, and everyone understands that warning, what warning means, but someone else, in some other cases, primary or secondary or tertiary, they are not so clear for people. So it is important to understand inside your environment, within your colleagues, what is something that you can share with them. And if there are no choices, I mean, no one knows anything about the area, you can start to define new things. But many times there are different people that have different ideas about how to name things, and you have really to research about it. I think that for the naming convention, we couldn't go too in depth now. It can be an entire session just for that.
But just you might have seen while in the background, I was basically grouping these styles together, and you can really just select few styles already created and do Command G to group them. When I create that group, you see now I have another layer in here that's called group, and so here I could say headings. Okay, so now you notice that there's a slash here because you could either name things within, this is the component browser where you can actually modify the components within the same document. Here, these styles are only coming from this document. The thing I was going to show you later is how to insert these styles. That can be done from here or from the insert window. But the point here is that you can do things like through this system here on the left side, renaming things or renaming each individual style. As you saw before, I was putting a slash in the middle here. I can put it anywhere, and that will actually create another group. So now I have headings and that entry one. So the slash convention in the name is what's being used around the world for organizing everything within Sketch, from symbols to, as you can see, from symbols here. You see also symbols have this kind of nice structure to make it easier for people to understand where things might be. You don't want to present all the choices at the very top, because it can become a really long list to scroll, and this is a fairly small system. So you want to start grouping things. How many layers you go down? Don't go too deep if for something that is really frequently used. So even find any conventions that make easier to find stuff that is always used. For example, at the moment, there's no way to favorite components, but there are ways. Sketch proposes to you things that are more frequently used in some parts of the UI. So that, and hopefully in the future, you'll be able to also favorite some of the things you want to use more often. As you can see here, you can browse through symbols, textiles, layer styles, and colors. Okay, so just wanted to show this is how you can drag elements around, for example, also from here to elsewhere. I don't want to now mess up the file, but you can really drag things around from here. Now, the other related thing I wanted to show is how to, then you can actually insert things quickly with a design, within the design system, once you have a design system in place, or even just a library in place. It doesn't have to be a whole-fledged design system. Full-fledged design system. As I said, a system is an ongoing, living, breathing thing. So let's say we want to create another page here. We realize this is a, there's a home page. There's now a products page where I can pick and choose some of the products, and then there's also the checkout. Okay, this is the macro let's say macro aspects of this app. But the more you go, then you realize, well, I probably need a few more steps in between. So let's try to create, for example, a detail view. If somebody's not ready to, buy now from the home page or add to cart when they're looking at the product page, they might want to see other information about a product. So now I'm just going to create another artboard. These, as you can see, are all iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's the phone I have. But if you are prototyping for yourself, you can obviously use, you should use the size of the device the closest to the device you have, so you can see what it looks like. And obviously, if you're developing a product for a specific audience, you want to make sure that you're designing either for the smallest screen that your audience has, or the combination of the smallest screen and the most frequently used by your audience. So in this case, I'm going to enter another artboard, pressing A, Pro Max, and I actually want it right here, so I can just drag it. So now the elements I want, in this case, I could also copy and paste from the next door artboard. I'm intentionally not doing that because I want to show you how you can do this from scratch. So now I can press C, or I could go via this and insert. I could just go insert this document, product library. This is the thing you keep in mind. You see, this document doesn't really have much because there's only a few symbols that were created to be specifically for this document. You can still do that. And a great use case for local symbols and styles is when you are experimenting with something and you want to propose that change to the design system managers, but until, let's say, you tested it, you don't want to bother everybody else with that change. And so that's a good reason for local styles. Not everything needs to be in the main library. In this case, I actually want to use the library. So I can go here and insert, for example, I have the navigation. In this case, is under action. And I want the mobile one, okay? So when I drop it here, by default, I can also choose to position like this. Because the component was intentionally designed at the smallest size for mobile, let's say, this is a 375, which is not necessarily the smallest size, depends where you are and what devices you have, but 375, I can actually, because this symbol was made responsive, I can either drag it like this, or I can set it to 100%. That's a nice thing in SketchUp for you. So you see, because of how it's built with certain properties, actually stretches nicely. So now the other thing you want to do is you actually want to position a little lower. This was at 36, so we'll also position this at 36. Design systems, as Matteo was saying, not only with the library, but with information around how to use components. So one thing that is currently missing per se in Sketch is a description on how to use that component. That is something we're working on and we hope to release this year. But otherwise, you can literally use a Sketch file to describe how to use components. And lots of libraries, if you look at, for example, IBM and other great libraries out there, and if you haven't yet, go and download those files to get a sense of how they built them. They can get overwhelming fast, so I suggest not to do it necessarily right away. Get a little familiar with Sketch, and then eventually look at somebody else's file. As you can see, in basically one drop, I was able to drop it in, and I can even decide to pin it to both sides and from the top. And then also, I'll set it immediately as fixed position in case we don't get to it later, because I want this element to be always on top, and also, if I were to make a prototype, to also say sticky at the top. So now another thing we want to do, we want to put the header there. So I'm pressing R, creating this rectangle from scratch, putting it here. Okay. Now the thing I want to do, in this case, I apply background sand here. One cool thing in Sketch, you can do Command Option C, and then apply the style to anything. Command Option V. So
Francesco, can you zoom it?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Perfect. Thank you for the feedback. So now I can drag this from here and just move it back, or I could use a shortcut. I don't want to overwhelm you with all the shortcuts, but for sure, like any software, learning shortcuts will make it much faster. So now I have it here. I can use a header. It's always good to name things, not only based on conventions from the design systems, but also name them so that everybody is opening your file. As you can see, Matteo is in this document here. So he could be jumping in and helping with making changes. So naming things correctly will definitely help our cause. So another thing I can do now, we said this is a detail view. So a detail view, let's say for Winter Bliss. I could do, actually, let's do it for Winter Forest. Okay, Winter Forest here is just the first item. So I can do from scratch. I can now going to press C again, and I can. This is now, instead of using the, I can insert elements also from the previous view that I showed you before, from up here, the components one, but that's mainly for editing. When you're really just inserting things, or if you are consuming the library in basically read-only mode, you really can only see components coming from an external library. In this case, it's called Product Folks Library Base, from this window. You can also trigger it just from this little tiny button here, and you can search components up here, but pressing C is definitely faster. So this is definitely another shortcut you want to remember. So now what we want to do here is put a title. Of course, I could copy from somewhere else. I want to show you how to search. So in this case, I want to put, I believe that was an H3. So I can just drag this here. Okay, so now we have it. In Sketch, anytime you press enter. So now we can call Winter Forest. Okay, now let's pretend we're going to have an image. Matteo, do you remember if this system, like icon, uses an image or a fill? What's the detail there? Do you remember?
Sorry, for what?
To apply the data here. Actually, I could.
You can just insert the data and modify them.
Okay. Oh, that's true.
So you can expose it.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was definitely another thing we wanted to show. So, if you have data already organized for your product, you might or might not. But let's say if you have at least a stub, an idea of the fields you want to have on this page, and especially if, for example, it's already organized in a JSON format, you can use what is called a new feature. It's called linked data that we released in the last couple of versions, and it's also, we think, is really powerful. In Sketch, we had for a long time the ability to insert simple, let's say I want to call simple data fields, where you could just insert a bunch of avatars or images individually. That's still really cool, and it's great for randomized or single items. But when you already have a data set that you want to use, for example, in this case, I want to bring in a data set from a product we know we want to list here. So a data set in this case is comprised of images and text and price and all these elements. So I could just drop them in here, and as you can see, they're now sorted alphabetically. Not always necessarily super useful, but you can see there's also sorted and grouped based on what the JSON file looked like. In this case, the JSON had a nested component for the price itself. So that's why you see these things combined. Okay, so now I'm just going to shuffle things around quickly. So we can see the image here. The image actually is of the food bottle. This is a funny ratio, so that's why you're seeing it this way. Then I have the title. Okay, the title is up here. This data obviously comes unstyled. So this is the whole point for this, is to then style it yourself. You can apply styles through this. You can search for a title I want to apply to this. Let's say I want to put an H1 here. Well, this is actually, sorry, I apologize. This is we tried to keep this design system really small, so I didn't distinguish it between textiles for mobile or desktop. We could have created completely two different sets for mobile and desktop, and that's how you should do it. But for the time being, I'm just going to cheat a little bit and just show you for, let's say, an H3, so at least it doesn't break the whole design. But technically, for mobile, you probably ideally, you want to have the same H1 mobile, H1 for desktop, so the developers know then how to combine these elements. They know how to make the media queries to then code H1 for desktop, H1 for mobile. Okay, so Matteo, you can see, is also helping me here. I'm just going to combine, actually, for the price. Instead of using this one here, I'm going to insert another utility that I have, which is, you might have noticed that we had under symbols here, we had price. So I can just drop this in, so I don't have to rebuild it every time. This is a perfect use case because there's it's made of the same pieces you saw dropped in from the data, but yeah, the currency, we have then the integer and then decimals for that price. So Matteo, thank you so much for helping. It's very hard to talk and do everything at once. So this digital view, okay, price-wise, let's say we can place it somewhere here for now. But as you can see, that data makes it easier to design things, and then you'll see it makes it easier to also apply the same data to a lot of elements. Now, why data? And data, as Matteo mentioned, is also part of the design system. Having realistic data for everybody involved, from the designers to the developers to product managers and users, that is realistic, really makes a difference. You can use this JSON feature that I showed you, link data, to not only mock the right designs, but also to stress test your designs. So let's say now, obviously, we're working with very simplistic data, right? But what if somebody has a super long description because it's user-generated data, or just because different products have different, much longer descriptions? So this allows you to also stress test your designs. So you could have different sets of data, apply them to different scenarios. Or it could be a set of data for a user that just joined the platform. So have nothing in their cart, or they have nothing in they have an empty profile, but you still have to design that state. And then you can have a data set that is for a designer, or for a user in the US, somebody in India, somebody in Japan. But the structure needs to work, because the same component will have to be used by different people in different from different people in different countries. And you don't want to just truncate things because it doesn't fit. You usually want to make things look nice. So now I can put it inside here. And Matteo, now this is already a data set, so applied to specific data sets. So I can show it kind of.
Actually, you use the dollars one instead the rupee one that we created today. So right. You can also swap it.
Yeah. So I can show how to do that. So for example, as you can see here, is recognizing that the rupee was already assigned to that. I can do refresh, and now as you can see, I have an option here. I can insert data randomly, and that's good in some scenarios. And if I do Command-Shift-D here, we'll keep updated. And as you can see, all the images, prices, etc., keep updating, which I think is really awesome. And then otherwise, you can decide to apply in not at random. So in this case, we'll apply just the first element that's selected. So if I do now refresh the data, I'll get the first element of the JSON, not the one listed here. So the one on the JSON. In this case, we probably flip this order of these elements. That's why they're showing it inverted. I will not get into that. The next improvement, in fact, that we're releasing 73.1 is going to be the ability to ignore the layer list in terms of if let's follow the spatial ordering. So if you have the top item or top left item, that will be the first one from the JSON data feed that you receive. Right, Matteo? Correct? Are we?
Yep. Yeah, it's perfect.
Great. So now the point is, I can, because I didn't get exactly the same data I want, I'll just quickly randomize it. It's only a few. Oops. There's only a few of these elements. I can just go through until I get the one I want. Otherwise, I'll just click create a link from elsewhere. Okay, I got it. So now from this one, and actually from this and this, I want the ability in Sketch, once you group things, the first time you hover something, you see it, this is a group. It's called products, right? It has the same element repeated inside it. The moment I select, just a hover something, I see the bounding box of that top group I can select. So if I go here, I actually see the artboard. But if I, in this case, if I want to select an element inside that group, pressing Command, you see I wish you could see my hands. And I wish I was showing you the keyboard shortcuts. But pressing Command, now I can click through and just select that element. If I press Shift as well, and now I can select multiple elements piercing through different groups. This is key because otherwise you're always selecting things from the layer list, and visually sometimes can be a lot more efficient. You know exactly what you're selecting. So in this case, the thing we want to do is that the Add to Cart button fakes the action of adding something to cart. So in this case, it goes from this one, from this one goes here, and you have a badge on the shopping cart icon, shopping bag icon. And from this one, instead, because you already added elements, just keeps adding. Obviously, I could create other states where I'm counting for increasing the count for the shopping bag. Trend more recently is not to show that number and just show the badge. So it depends on how you're mocking your how the functionality in your app. At the moment, we don't have logic within Sketch, so you would have to really create a different screen per badge number up here. But it's very easy. You just duplicate the artboard and eventually change the number if you had a number in there. So for this, what I want to do is I want to do that touching the anything other than the button will actually go to this detail view. Thank you, Matteo. You're making it a lot nicer. So now from just need to find that component. Actually, I'll do it for Matteo. Did we have that spot here? I can't remember. I believe we did, right? So as you can see, when I select everything,
yeah, you have it. It's the last one. Is the last one in the list.
This one, right? So whenever I select the symbol, I see all the properties at once. So one thing you can do is also just select, you see on the list here, and now at that point it makes it easier to just find the item, especially if you're not the one that created that symbol, let's say in that moment. You can just select from the list, and then eventually you have an overrides list, it's called, where you can just choose the properties for that element. So in this case, I want to go not to Promax, let's call it winter forest, and product detail view, winter forest, and it's good to give it a number, so I'll call it 2.1. Okay. The nice thing about naming that artboard correctly, as you saw, what I was trying to do here, I was trying to choose a target. As you know, I don't know if you noticed, but I was able to also just click here and choose the background. I had to do it twice. The first time it selects the element, and the second time allows me to pierce through that symbol and choose just the card hotspot. So in this case, I can go here, and I can choose. Now I have a list of artboards. They're all in the same. We decided for ease of presentation to put both mobile and desktop in the same canvas, in the same page. But you can easily just duplicate the page and move some artboards from one place to another, and the hotspots links will be retained. So in this case, I want to link to 2.1. As you can see, the fact that I named them correctly, now the things are listed all alphabetically. So product, And I technically I should have added mobile at the end because that was a convention. So I'm going to do that here, mobile. And if I had a separate page, I wouldn't have to necessarily also add that at the end. So now though, so the behavior is that when I click it, you see there's this upper arrow. In Sketch, you can Control F to show all the links. It can get overwhelming fast to show them always all the time. So if you turn it off, and you can do it from View, show prototyping, you only see the links related to the things you've selected. So in this case, show prototyping will show everything. Control F will turn it off. But if I'm here now, I'm seeing, okay, from this card already created connections. I don't have to do it anymore. I can just do it from here and now select another click and select the background.
There is something weird here because I cannot see the hotspot in this button, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that was kind of I can see as if that didn't update necessarily this one. So anyway, for now, let's just do it on this one. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about prototypes. Also, let's show how prototypes work. So let me hit save. Sketch, even if I did not hit save, and I could have done it from save here, we've been working off a cloud, and you can work offline or online with Sketch, doesn't matter. But if you open a cloud document and start working offline, you can keep working, and when you go back online, your changes will be pushed to the cloud. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I lost the connection, I can no longer work. So that's definitely a huge benefit. What I want to show here is now how to see the prototype. So the prototype here, I can go, I can either click here, preview, and because Sketch's priority is not to be a print tool, but actually a design and prototype tool, Command P also triggers that. So now I can go, this is another starting point. I can just go to homepage mobile, and now I can see here, you can see that what it was anchored there is still there. If I click buy now, then in this case, it takes me to the to choose a favorite color here, and I could click add to cart. So I've added to cart. If instead I click winter forest here, that will take me to, and you saw we also were able to define the transition to be right to left. That's usually standard on mobile to have some when you go from a list view to a detail view. So thank you, Matteo. I don't know if yet this is also added here, so I could add that to cart. And let's say once I decide to check out, And so I'm ready to go. So this is really good to have the ability to prototype within the tool to get a sense of flows, even if you are not the final designer that will be doing maybe even more detailed prototyping or the developer building it. As a product folk, I want to say you really want to be able to mock a flow. And it can be lower fidelity, but if the moment you have a design system in place, doesn't have to be super low fidelity. Maybe you will not get all the spacing right, but you're still not starting from scratch. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. Everybody on the team will thank you. And nobody wants to, oh, I have a PDF, now I have to copy the information from PowerPoint and paste it in here. So if you're using Sketch, you can use the same components, and then the designer can go and polish it. Or we can collaborate with UX, collaborate with anybody. Because
and also because this is the next step. If Francesco saved the file, as I believe Francesco did it. If you go to the cloud version of it, so in the browser, you can see the prototype from the browser, share it with everyone, even if with people that don't have access to Sketch. And this is important.
Yeah. And so one thing to point out, you see these are all prototypes. They're part of the e-commerce app, and and there's a latest version here. You can click here to see the latest. As you can see, we have the version history. So you'll see also things we were doing, yesterday to prep for this. But as you can see, we added more prototypes over time. And now if I were to click here, I could choose to see it with hotspots or hotspots disabled. In this case, I'm going to do with hotspots. Okay, if I could copy the link, now I could open it in the incognito window. Just one thing before I do that, I want to check the settings. So by default, every document you create in Sketch is set to be, as in the sharing, is set to be with no access. We really care about privacy. We want to make sure you don't leak anything by mistake. So you have to come here and change it to anybody with a link can view the document if you want to share with somebody external. That is, unless you can and you feel like it would be better to invite them specifically via email. That way you guarantee they will have to create a free account, but they'll be able to, you're not leaking anything to anybody. Not that this way you have to. It's still a very long link, so pretty much impossible to guess. But so now one thing I want to show you is pretty cool. And if you have a device in front of you, now I can see, you see I'm not logged in. I can see less information intentionally because we did not turn on comments for this specific share. So if I were to click here, this URL, you see with play, that's the URL for a prototype. So the moment I go, then I wanted to show you something else. This URL, I could copy and paste it, and actually I will do that. I could paste it in the chat. Okay. The prototype. Okay, so now if you click on that from your mobile device, you'll be able to see it. The other thing you can do, which doesn't work automatically in incognito window, is if I go here, Google Chrome allows you to, when you click on that field, you can click here, QR code. And so if you have a phone, you can just, and that doesn't, any browser, any phone, you can just go scan it and tap the notification you get at the top. And now this will load the prototype. I don't know if you can see it. It's definitely better to see on your phone, but you can navigate it exactly the way you were doing on, and the transitions are the same. Now, if you want to use it for testing, you probably want to turn off the hotspots. So it depends, but if you're sharing with developers, you probably want to keep the hotspots going, or anybody internally, especially if the prototype is not, it's just one specific flow. You're not testing, but you're presenting in that case. You really want to make sure that all spots are visible. Okay.
Yeah, just to mention, it is important to mention that the versions are versioning also the prototypes. So then now at the moment, everything is in rupee, but if you want, you can translate everything in dollars. If you got a different JSON file with different, I don't know, in this case, we created a second one that does have all the dollars inside. So it will automatically change the values. And why is not applying?
Because because probably apply to the group and not to the, let me do that again, sorry. Okay.
Yes. So now you can see that everything is in dollar. And if we save it, we can also share a prototype, a secondary prototype, which is in dollar and one is in rupee. So you can quickly swap between languages, swap between different things, knowing that all the data are consistent and are together. And this is another part of a design system, because design system, again, is not only design and code, it's a lot of more things, and also data, and the things that you are going to use are usually important to be consistent all through the prototypes you are sharing. Also, in this case, maybe you have to beta testing or A/B testing, or like if you have to A/B testing, the versioning with prototypes is important as well, because maybe, I don't know, you're going to try a different place for buttons, a different colors for buttons at the beginning of the design of your design system, etc. And you can see that something is working better than something else, and you can share them with your customers or people that have to test it, and just to receive the feedback that you need.
Exactly. And then here, I'm just going to show that basically also the prototype obviously is available right away in the Mac app, and then just takes a few seconds to process in the cloud. And now if we were to go through, and then you can see here, you can navigate also to, so this is for the specific artboard. If I were to go back to a previous version, you see it's in rupee. And this is instead is, and so the thing to keep in mind is that this artboard is, the R stands for release. or so each artboard has its own release. So if you are working with a developer and you want to send them a specific version, you can just copy the link, go to that version, and copy that link. Know that they can use that as a reference, and you can keep iterating on the next round of that feature without having to be concerned about the fact that they might jump on another version by mistake if they always start from the same link. You can also star things. There's here, so that, sorry, you have to do it from this page. You can, at the moment, it's tricky because it looks the same. You have to do it from the actual version, not from the artboard itself. But here I can decide to star something. Once that is starred, that means that an external member will only see the things are starred. So if your developers are external, this is a good way to also just send them that specific version and only that one, and they won't see anything else history-wise. I'm going to remove it now. Otherwise, it can mess up the link you were all looking at. But we think this is really cool feature too, having multiple prototypes without having to duplicate that project and now hack it so you don't lose the first version and now you need second version. We think this is a much more smooth way of working with multiple rounds of prototyping and documents and libraries as well. So also all the libraries will have all these versions displayed in cloud. I think that there was something else, Mateo, we wanted to show. I know we kind of changed the order.
There are too many things, and we are running out of time. One thing that is important to mention to me, again, and this is the last thing, is a design system can be one library, can be many libraries, can be many different things. There are a few questions in the QA related also.
Okay.
Q&As related with also how to connect with developers. We maybe are going through them later on. Yes, that was the part I wanted to.
Okay, so if that's
show.
the question, let's do that. Let's say I created this app here, and I want my developers to start building something. Okay, so I have this. I'm looking at a specific artboard. Let's say I'm good. I can at the document level. At the document level, I can invite people. I can click here and say, okay, my developer is external. I can put, let's say, their email address. If instead they are either they're internal, they already have access to this. And by internal, I mean, this is just the users that are invited to the specific document. In the future, we'll add the ability to invite people to a project, and the project would allow to have one or more sketch files in it. But if I go here, you'll see if you're an admin, there's workspace settings. You can actually here invite multiple editors. You can just add editors here, okay? Or you can invite members in general, and if it's just a viewer, but they need to be able to have access to everything in your workspace, you can do it from this place too, and that's free. Okay, now viewers are free. So if you are a team where you have a few designers but a lot of developers, even just a few though, you don't have to pay for seats, and they don't have to be on a Mac to be able to inspect the documents. So I just want to show you the quick flow. If instead you are at the document level, let's say I have this document here ready for handoff. So I want to now copy the URL. I can do it even up here. Let's pretend I'm a developer now. So I'm going to open a new window. Because this document, we made it public. One thing I showed you before, I was only thinking about prototyping, right? So when I did that, I only set it to view only, and that view only is great for clients or for anybody just needs to give feedback but not really inspect the document. So I set it to view only. If I were to set it to inspect and download, that's instead where now if I were to refresh this page, I will also see the inspector. Otherwise, that tab is not visible. Now I'm on incognito, so that's why you see the welcome here that explains what you can do with inspector. But the gist is that with inspector you can see every element you have here. I have, for example, a piece of text. I could even copy that piece of text. I can see the color that was applied to that, and that it's coming from a library, so I can copy that as well. I can copy the color itself. I can even change how, as a developer, I want this color format. So if let's say I want it in Swift, I can then copy that. Okay. The things that will be, and also you can copy things by clicking on the labels here. We made it a little easier. Before there were tiny buttons. Now we're trying to make it a little easier for people to copy these things. You can download assets. I did not set anything as exportable in this document, but if I
just did it, but you have to go to the latest version.
Okay.
And they are in the 2.0 collection with also the something is certainly in a channel. But if you,
Okay, so here I can click export assets, and so it depends how big these assets are. Might take a little bit to download. Otherwise, we'll just prepare it, and I'll get an email when if I if I requested the assets and I was logged in. So that's another advantage of being logged in. So now I can just click, we'll download it. I can see all the assets that Matteo set up for me. At the moment, you still need the designer or the person editing, setting up things as exportable, and then there will be and in what format, and then the developer will be able to download them. But in the future, we want also developers to be able to define directly in cloud what should be exportable, and that's really because designers can predict to a certain extent how they want things to be exportable, how it's going to be coded, but the developers actually will know at the end. One thing to keep in mind here, you can also drag this image elsewhere. So if, for example, you're have to make a presentation out of this somewhere else and you don't want to use the prototyping feature, you can just drag it, or you want to drag it into Jira or another project management tool or Slack, you can do that without having to open the Mac app. So that's another good thing to know. We really want to make it easy to consume this content from known designers in the cloud, and keeping the best designer and creation experience within the Mac app. We think that's where we think we're getting really good feedback from users in terms of how good of an experience it is throughout the day for a tool you have to use over and over and over for multiple hours. One thing they want to point out that we'll be also releasing soon is the ability to see all the styles that you defined within the Mac app will be also very easy to find in the inspector. So the developer doesn't have to go find or recreate those styles. They'll know exactly the name of the style used and the components. So if a component belongs to a library, or component encompasses everything from symbols to colors and styles. So any component, I'll be able to click here. At the moment, I see the button and in the property itself, but the moment we release this feature, you'll be able to then go find that button in the library it belongs to. And so you'll be able to see the button as a component, and developer will know, okay, I already done this. Even it has a different color, I just need to pass a variable for the color, let's say, or a prop for the color, and not reinvent the wheel. This is already existing. So that's good for people that have to scope things out. They're looking at a new design. Okay, this is based off a design system. We can build this faster. It doesn't have to take forever to build this page. It's still the same components. So yeah, so that's one thing that, some of the benefits we're mentioning in the beginning. This is where you start seeing them come to life. Once we completed the flow of working from ideation to release, and then obviously the faster it is to develop, the faster it's to put it in front of users, get real feedback, and then bring it back. So same thing for prototyping. Matteo, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just saying that another question was related more probably to export the code.
Okay.
At the moment, it is possible via plugin or other ways like that. Sketch is trying to be as agnostic as possible within the language code you have and all those kind of things. But definitely is in our radar to understand and try to define better ways to export things. But definitely there are options to export directly code.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of other, the nice thing about Sketch being a file format that's easy to interpret, that means that other companies can build, and there's lots of companies that build tools on top of Sketch that can help from versioning to more in-depth handoff if you need something like that, to even other prototyping. If you, the click-throughs we have here are great for, very quick prototypes. If you need to get into micro-interactions, you probably want to explore other tools to do so. As one thing I wanted to show is that within the Mac app, at the moment, we do expose the ability to copy CSS attributes or SVG for code. So that can be useful if your developer has access to a Mac. Otherwise, they'll have to download the assets from the cloud. Something really quick I wanted to show that we didn't get a chance. Hopefully, we have a few more minutes. Do you think we can get something in real quick?
Yeah,
okay.
I think.
So one of the things that is great about Sketch is you can extend Sketch. You can create plugins. You can create scripts. We can send you, if you're interested, also links to how, with a little bit of JavaScript knowledge, you can really pull out any information you have. So if you want to extract every single style that already exists or every single color exists in a document, you can do it yourself very quickly. This is just an example to show you, for example, how you can extract all the colors that you already have in your document and the names that the designer defined. So the designer defined or other people also defined. So in this, you can see all the colors we talked about before, the general background ones, then the branding ones, primary, lighter, darker, interaction colors, all these, and even the PF color we created just for this event, right? I could just copy this and then paste and give it to a developer. They would have a starting point. They don't have to really go and match everything from the inspector, although obviously they can do that. And if in case, I'm going to show you something really quick. If I thought I could, let me, okay, here we go. You might be familiar with the concept of theming or having to just repurpose like a design system or a project for another client that has different branding I was mentioning before. So let's say this is the main theme. These are the colors that we already saw before. If I were to paste them here, they would be identical. And then we can see this is an intentionally very distinct theme. So the colors are going to be, might not be as usable, is just to get the point across. So I can just copy these instead here. And if I go back to Sketch, instead of copying from here, I can actually just paste the CSS or those, I won't call them CSS, those color names. And those names will, if you didn't have them already, they would be generated. If you instead had them already, will just be remapped to now match all these colors. And now I just changed the whole library. Okay, if I go back to typography and colors, everything has changed here. If I go to symbols, all my symbols have been updated, which I think is really cool. And this is just because we actually use color variables. If we had not used color variables, all this would have not been possible. It would have to resort to changing the color styles, which is possible too, but it's just a little more laborious. So using color variables correctly allows you to do this. Now, if I were to click Save, I create an update. It's processed in the cloud. I'll go there in a second. In browser. And now we're seeing the two versions. So the one that last saved 58 minutes ago, that was in blue, and this is the new version. So I can quickly test this if I like it. And by doing so, I just need to open Sketch again, go into my e-commerce app. If I click here, I see there's a library update available. This could be faster, but at the moment the library goes to cloud, and then once it's processed, it comes back to me. So I can just accept that. And accept that, I just need to download it. And once it's downloaded, it will prompt me to actually accept these changes. So the first, we're hopefully working on improving this workflow too, but so you first need to download the app, the library, and then the next step is we compare the old library with the new one and see if there's anything you were using that needs to be updated in your designs. So in this case, you can see the button went from green to blue, from blue to green, and new and old, and I can also see anything else. In this case, everything changed, so that's why I have all these changes. When I click Update Components, now it's updated everywhere. And now you saw something revert quickly. This is something that I think we have a temporary bug here. If I just close this, I'll save and close it, we'll actually update with the latest version there. So let me, and e-commerce app. And you can see everything is correct here. That's just the kind of a preview bug we have. But as you can see, I've updated everything, ready to go. I can, and now I can share this version if I want to. So same thing here. I'm going to save. This version will be in the cloud, and now I can go see that. So this is really, if you want to, and if you had multiple libraries, because you want to keep really distinct files per library, you can also decide to use another plugin to relink those libraries. So you can say, okay, today I want to check this design for the client A. Now I'm making this new design. What it will look like with the library for client B? It really depends on your workflow, how you producing this new iterations of features, for example. But just know that libraries empower you to do all this.
Awesome. Francesco, slightly short on time, so we'll just take a few questions here. So Matteo answered most of the questions in the Q&A piece. We'll just take very popular questions that were coming from the community. So I think you can stop projecting, that's fine. So very quickly, any company or product that you really admire for their design system and something we should look forward up to and really be inspired about? Any personal favorites for both of you?
Oh, absolutely. I'll let Matteo speak to that, but I know he.
It has to be apart from Sketch. So keep that.
Yeah, of course. Let me stop sharing this.
It really depends on how big and difficult and complex the design system should be. But good references, there are a lot of them, and like one of the most known design system is IBM's Carbon, and the other one is Salesforce Lightning. Those two definitely have a lot of references, documentation. They are very well documented. They are very well organized. They are very well maintained, and they are a reference from that can help to understand what an entire and complete design system could be. It is interesting, though, if you look at the documentation of them, the documentation of a lot of design systems is more or less for developers and designers only. And again, this is something that can be investigated. I did it in the past a few times, and I discovered that people that are in product needs a different organization in the documentation side than the designers and developers. So once you are starting to document, and documenting a design system should be taken in consideration as soon as possible. When you start to document it, please ask and try to understand the requests and the needs inside your own company. Just don't follow what everyone else is doing in the world. And this is the other bit that is important, and to me, is not following what the others are doing just because they are doing and they are big. Not always a big and known design system is perfect. And maybe it's perfect for that company. Maybe it is possibly that it is not perfect for you. There are a lot of complexities in the IBM's Carbon team design system, for instance, that maybe you don't need. You can simplify it a lot. And it is good to have big references, but it is always good to define and to assess your needs and also where your company is. If you are a company that already knows design system, already have them in place, etc., it is a lot easier to go more complex. Otherwise, maybe it is better to start from something that is simple, small, but that gives you like some easy wins, like a system of just buttons and icons and things that you are using continuously. And because those things helps you to showcase how important it is to have something underneath. So assessing your design system maturity, not only the design maturity, could be important.
Awesome. That sounds great. Abhi, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So the next question is, on at what stage, a company should start investing in a design system? I know, there not be any right answer to this, because some start investing at very early stage, when founders start designing the system. Some people do after they hire a couple of people or maybe a head of design. But I mean, what is the ideal time frame, or what is the time frame after which, if they don't invest, it will be too late for them?
That's a very good point.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard because different companies are in different stages as a company too. So if it's a startup, it's very hard to justify sometimes. Like and it feels like it's a uphill battle to say, oh, we have to invest in this. I think the system needs to grow with the company, so that if you are an early, it might make sense to have a system that is not trying to solve everything, because you will not know all the problems, but know that you're not too far behind, so that you can reap the benefits of having the system. And you using even just there's this big distinction between libraries, right, and the design system. So the libraries and styles are the core aspect of it from the practical standpoint. The design system, as we said, is a lot more. So investing in a full-blown design system might take time, but it's never too early to start using symbols and styles with your documents, so that then if you need to upgrade things over time or swap them out, try a different style altogether, you can do so. So don't be afraid of creating styles and components in Sketch, let's say, or any other tool early on. You'll be, if you feel like you're being constrained by that, that's okay. Maybe don't do it for everything. But the moment you start duplicating something, that might be the right time to start, creating a symbol. Even if it's temporary, you can always toss them if they don't work. But at least we'll make your design process also more in line with how software works. If you have the same element on different screens, you want that to be identical. So even if it's a low fidelity, that's all true for, there's wireframing, they're called kits sometimes and not design systems. They're also for just wireframes. And so you want to make sure even there, you're building something that's consistent. Consistency helps with, kind of by default, with accessibility. You then have to code it also to be accessible, but accessibility starts with recognizable patterns for similar actions you're taking in between screens. Let's call them screens, because most of the times we're working with screens, right? So investment, though, I just want to mention the last thing. The design system is a product. For larger companies, is definitely a product. You have teams where the dedicated people that just do that. And so it's very hard to tell a startup with just a few people, oh, we need 5 people to manage the design system, right? That's not gonna fly. So you kind of have to grow with that. Sorry, Matteo, I cut you off.
No, I just wanted to say that everyone is aware of the existence of style guides. Style guides can be a very, very, very easy starting point, but in the end is like a very embryonic state of a design system, because you've got styles for titles, styles for text, styles for icons, etc., illustrations, etc. And this is something that everyone knows and can be a starting point. In the end, a design system started from there, and the need of having more complex and organized things that connected also tech, design and development. But in a nutshell, a style guide can be a very good starting point for your company.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, I guess we have very less time, so we'll just take 2 more questions. I was planning to take some other question, but I think we have one very popular question coming up. Can we hope for Sketch on Windows this year?
Well, so if it were this year, since we're already in June, we probably would have told you. Yes, so now we can't really speak to things that are beyond 6 months or but I don't want to also overpromise. So don't take my words as a yes or no. It's like like the FBI says, I cannot decline or
confirm or deny.
That's exactly the same thing for us. We can't give away things that would be happening if at all past a certain time. Because we don't want to overpromise people. We don't want to make you think that we're doing things that we don't really plan to do. And things change. Last year, for example, Big Sur came out, and for people on the Mac, it's a big change, and it's a wonderful change. Brought a lot of also improvements, but that meant for us to have to spend a few months just creating now the UI for another OS, while the previous OS is still super popular and still around. So we try to maintain. Well, we support the software for multiple operating system versions, but it was definitely a big challenge for our team. The team is growing. There's 140 of us. When I joined about 2 years ago, it was 70. Before we were only 40, and then 20, really 6 months or a year prior. So we're growing. The more we grow, for sure, the more we can build. We have 40 plus positions open. So, go check them out.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
awesome.
yeah, that's what. So, but I wish I could say, oh yeah, no, I can't say that.
Yeah. Abhay, you want to take the last question, then we'll close.
Yes. So the last question is on what are the resources?
Okay,
Oops.
I guess Abhay stuck, but I guess the question is any good resources on design or design systems that you recommend? Any popular authors or websites where we can go and check more detail about?
It is quite a hot topic. There are plenty of them. One resource that because we are all on Slack in the world now, so there are a few Slack channels that are important. One is named Design Systems, and there are plenty of people there. A lot of the people that in some ways invented the design system idea are there as well. There are a lot of very good articles in Medium or in other resources as well. The problem sometimes is to find something that is good and to discard something that is not. Unfortunately, this is coming with more knowledge about about design systems, and it also depends a lot how in depth you want to go, because there are very technical articles and there are very broader articles. One good starting point, even if I and Francesco are always trying to be agnostic from frameworks, etc., is to read through the book Atomic Design, just because probably the entire idea and hype about design system started with that book. And it is a super important one, and everyone that is in this world at least once in their life had to read it. It is also interesting how quickly a book about design system can become old. I bought a book like 2 years ago, and when you look at it, it looks like 20 years old now. Because this world is expanding, and we are exploring a lot of innovative way to do things that like 6 months looks like 10 years, which is interesting and is exciting at the same time. We will send you some link later on in the directly to part so you can share it.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thanks a lot, Matteo and Francesco. This was a really amazing, fun session. I think typically one of the most hands-on sessions we have seen at TPF. Thanks a lot for joining in and giving your time and being so prepped, keeping that currencies in the same symbol as INR. Thanks a lot for that. And yeah, for the rest, I would like to thank everyone who joined on a Friday evening. It's quite late in India, and thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks a lot for supporting TPF. You can know more about us on www.thepproductfolks.com. You can follow us on Twitter. For Sketch, you can look at sketch.com. Everything is available there. You can follow Matteo and Francesco on LinkedIn as well. There will be 5 raffles that will happen. That will be based on the overall participation that we had on the event. You will be getting an email if you have won the raffle. We'll also do a shout out on Twitter on whoever has won that raffle. So yeah, I think Francesco already answered a student discount question. So definitely take that student discount if you're looking to explore Sketch. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great Friday evening and a great weekend ahead. Any closing thoughts? Yes. Go ahead, Francesco.
Well, the thing is, I'm sorry if I didn't hear correctly, but in terms of raffles, how do we want to do since we didn't give them away during this?
That's okay. So I think a quick activity that we can do is you can just post your sketch designs on Twitter and or LinkedIn and tag Matteo, Francesco, and the product folks. We select the best one and give you a sketch license. Right? Does it sound cool?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
So design a design system or design anything that interests you for starters, and tag Matteo and Francesco and the product folks for sure. And we'll get in touch with you, provide your email ID to Sketch, and they'll give you a free license. Yeah. Awesome. Kiran, you're not a designer, but you can definitely put some hands on after 1.5 hours today. So yeah. Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone. Cheers and have a great night ahead. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
And
Bye,
be
everyone.
safe.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very much, and keep safe.
Yeah.